Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SuperCoach, mates. Well, round 18's done and dusted, which means we are really on the home stretch when it comes to both the AFL season and the SuperCoach season. So we're just going to do a quick recap of our weekends, and obviously we're going to do everyone's favourite segment, which is my Nags, which I think is going to hurt a little bit for Thomas. And we've got a little game that we're going to do as well in here. So, obviously tonight joined by Thomas. How are you, Thomas? And how was your weekend?
Yeah, not too bad. I'll elaborate on it a bit later, but yeah, scored the 23-19, which I was probably lucky to get in the end. I know Nick Martin pretty much saved my round. Going massive in that Melbourne game. Lloyd Meeks pulled a 50-point quarter out of his ass in the last quarter to kind of salvage a decent score and kind of something that wasn't too bad. I thought I'd bump up the rankings a little bit more than I did, but literally only bumped up about 20 spots, which is a bit frustrating. But probably in hindsight, we'll get to what I did with my trades a little bit. But yeah, could have got a lot bigger if I ended up trading in like the likes of Lockie Neal. But obviously Jonas, who's not with us this season, but yeah, he's been flying in
Hey,
regards to overall rank.
484.
Yeah, so 23, another 2300 scored by him, or 2330, and yeah, 484 rank. So hopefully he can push even higher to the top, going to top 250, top 100k if he plays his cards right. But how did you go with your draft, Nathan, this week? Obviously your draft's focused this season, but how are you going with that one?
Yeah, another win. Just sides just rolling along. Obviously I was hurt a little bit by Heaney not playing and McGovern not playing. But I still managed to scrape just over 11, just under 1100, which was still, I think, the second or third highest in the league I'm in with my friends. So I can't complain. We'll just give a shout out to Noah Anderson,
Yeah,
132. And his home record this year is insanely good, but his away record this year is just not as flash. So home games this year is averaging about 130, and then away games is averaging about 100. So you could just find a little bit more balance. Um, he been a grader, but yeah, I can't complain when he goes gangbusters at home. We just got to hope that the Suns get games every week at Carrara, which is never going to happen.
yeah, exactly right. And I know he was one that, yeah, went gangbusters as usual, especially with no Toot Miller in the side as well. But yeah, my player of the round went to Nick Martin. He salvaged a very nice score. I wasn't obviously paying attention to this game as much because St Kilda were playing at the same time. Probably should have ended up turning over this game at the last quarter. But yeah, he
Yeah,
seemed to play his half back role for 3 quarters. I did watch the highlights and pushed into that wing role moving forward in the last quarter. And that's where he scored 2 out of his 4 goals in that last quarter. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, Nathan, about Nick Martin's role if you paid any attention to Essendon's season. But it almost seems like he plays better off that wing. It was almost close to all Australian form last year. But kicking 4 goals off that wing and just dominating, like he has a kind of role where even if he pushes higher up the ground in that wing role, he still rolls back into defense and gets the ball out from there. It almost seems like the higher up the ground he is, the more dangerous he is with regards to his ability to kick the ball out into inside 50. Like, obviously, when he's in the defensive 50, he gets a lot of the ball, but a lot of his mistakes happen in that really vulnerable position in that D50 arc into pushing to midfield, where if you turn the ball over there, you're pretty much conceding a goal. What are your thoughts, Nathan, on where Nick Martin's best position is moving forward? Obviously, if he can pump out 140s off a wing, you're probably not complaining at all.
yeah. Well, I feel like that Nick Martin is the Essendon version of Nick Dacos in that he can really play anywhere that Essendon need him to play, and they know what they're going to get from him. They know that he's probably just about their best kick outside of Merritt in their side. Elite ball user. He doesn't mind getting forward and kicking a few goals. I just vividly remember Anzac Day when he was a bit quiet off half back, and then at halftime, Brad Scott flung the magnets around, and he got moved into the forward end of the ground, and he basically almost single-handedly got Essendon over the line on Anzac Day. So I feel like the only question mark over him is you'd probably like him to be a little bit more settled in one position across the ground. But gee, if you've got a player like this who can just be flicked around, like Nick Dacos can, and still sort of consistently score big scores, well, I don't think it's going to really matter where he plays. But for Supercoach, you probably want to see him more in the front half, given the way the Supercoach scoring works, where it's sort of more based off damage and impact as opposed to pure possession numbers. So the fact that he's only had 26, but he's got the 4 goals, has probably elevated his score as opposed to him just playing off the half back line. So yeah, I feel like most games this year he's probably started at half back, and he's sort of been flung forward if Essendon need a bit of a spark going forward. So yeah, I feel like that you know what you're going to get from him now, which is a pretty consistent scorer. And I mean, I think he's an option who clubs perhaps might need to go and look at putting some time into. Just given the impact that he does have on the ball, because I think sides will now look and go, well, we're going to lock Merritt away every week. So if there is a second option, well, this guy, Nick Martin's probably going to be the first cab off the rank, just given what he does with the ball in hand. So, yeah, but to answer your question, basically, I don't think it really matters where he plays. I think he's shown this year as a consistently high scorer. So, I would probably prefer him in the front half, but as long as he's out there and scoring, it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly right. It's almost been every time he's been swung forward late in games, it's almost been best on ground with his performances late. But if I just flip over to my team, if that works, yeah. So as I said, scored 23-19. If I just go to my actual team that you can see on screen now, yeah, I've got the full 22 premiums. I used the 2 trades this week. I was umming and ahhing all week, really. I was potentially bringing in Nankervis and Sam DeConning as a bit of a pod. Luckily, I didn't go through that route because Sam DeConning just stumping up against your mob on Friday night. Ended up trying to go the cash saver route and brought in Lloyd Meek for Max Gorn through his injury and McGovern just because I didn't have any cover left on the defensive line, which is really frustrating considering that Marty Hoare and Zachary have been deadwood since round 1, basically. And the likes of Humphrey, show makers are really starting to dominate as rookies, and we'll touch on them later. But yeah, brought in Meek and then Connor Rosie at sub 500, which I'm still pretty happy with his output. He hasn't dropped below 100 since his return, and plays at Tigers this weekend, so could get a spike score there. Have 269.9k in the bank, which is obviously a lot of money. Hence the reason why I decided to do that was to upgrade Jai Clark with my last trade. Whether or not I'll pull it this week is yet to be seen. There is merit in both ways to get a quick 23rd premium to be able to loop the likes of McKercher, Charlie Kerno, I guess, as well. But the frustrating part, which I realised as well, which I'm kind of stuck, which in hindsight, I probably should have just gone the more expensive route. If you look at who I can afford, obviously, if I scroll down here to the likes, obviously, Petrarca's out for the season. Hayden Young's an option. Elliot Yo's an option. John Newcomb, I don't really like. Chad Warner's an option. And that's really about it in that range. And if I swap Martin to defense, the other defenders I can get, which are probably a little bit more appealing, you got Nazai Wangadi-Miller, and Dan Houston are the two that, and even Tom Stewart bouncing back in a kind of newfound mid-roll. Those are kind of the 5 to 6 options that I can afford. And even as a forward mid-swing, there's not too many. Like Ollie Dempsey's a rookie, so really not affordable. Tobias Green, I don't really like. And yeah, if you look at the other options down the forward line, like you look at how they've been structured, unless Zach Fisher gets called up next week and is a mainstay in their team, you look at the forward options, there really isn't anything other options than Flanders, Heaney, Caudle, Rankin, who's out for 4 weeks, Zorko, Dylan Moore's an up and down roller coaster, which he probably based his break even is 134. So I could probably potentially even wait a week and get Dylan Moore as an extra forward, considering my forward line is the weakest point. But having said that, McKerch is at my M8 position, and he's going to have these off games at times when North do get smashed. So it's a tough one to see who I'll bring in. What are your thoughts based on looking at my team, Nathan? Who do you reckon? Is it worth waiting a week, or do you reckon it could be worth pulling the trigger on a 23rd premium and bringing one in now and just hoping to God that there's no other injuries in either in the defensive line or forward line that could, essentially mean I'm stuck with a donut for the remainder of that season?
Yeah, well, I would probably say your biggest problem's probably McKercher at M8, to be perfectly honest with you. I know he's a rookie, but I think you're probably leaking about 20 points a game by leaving McKercher there as opposed to getting, someone else in that spot. But the problem is that probably all of the best players are actually in the back line. So, looking at that option. So I don't know if it'd be worthwhile just flinging Nick Martin or Nick Dacos into the midfield.
Yeah.
And then basically getting in that 23rd premium being Wanganeen Malera in the back line or whoever you go with, or I know you can't get Sinclair now. And then basically just having McKercher as a, defensive and midfield bench cover, because I can see you've got Jai Caldwell there as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like you've probably
Will
got
be
that.
my forward. If I flip it, I flip it back to my forward line. Jarcord will be in that F3 position, obviously.
Yeah, so I would probably say I don't think Kruger's going to get dropped from Collingwood's side, unless he gets injured, given our forward deficiencies. So I feel like he's pretty safe in that role. So I feel like if you can move Jai Clark on and just play with Nick Martin as your M8, which I think is probably ideally you'd probably want him in the back line, but I think I'd rather have Nazaya Wanganeen Malera than Colby McKercher on the field at this stage of the year. And I think Colby McKercher is probably a great, M9 or D7, wherever you need to swing him. And you've always got Nick Martin or whoever, so that if for whatever reason you do need McKercher out of there, you can swing him up to give a bit of hand. The only problem with that, though, is that you don't have a midfield defender on the bench in the midfield. Which might actually give merit to the idea then of actually moving Nick Martin into that midfield role now, and then trading in Wanganeen Malera for Jai Clark, which I think would then give you the ability to, once the trade's gone through or whoever you decide to go with, I think that would then give you the ability to flick McKercher up into the back line, possibly, if you can do it.
No, it doesn't really work. I mean, obviously, I get what you're saying. Obviously, it doesn't really work because I don't have any cover. Any defensive capabilities in the defensive line.
Yeah, that's.
So I think, I know where you're coming from. I think the frustrating part, we probably got to move on as well because we're a little bit pushing on to different stuff here. But I guess the main thing is I guess you look at where I'm at the moment, and I could have easily gone Nan Curvis. I don't know if I could have afforded Neil. I don't remember how much cash I had in bank. But yeah, I could have easily gone Meek, Lockie, Neil, Nan Curvis, Dunkley, and essentially gone, I've got about 20k left with whatever I have to trade with. I can upgrade McKercher or whatever. Now I'm in that position where I can afford a 23rd premium. Obviously, in an ideal situation, I would want to loop in the defensive mid here. I'd want to loop in mid forward. It just hasn't worked out. Like Dowling's stuck in the midfield bench when he's scoring quite nicely, and Kruger's he's good for about a 50 and 60, which is not the worst in the world, I guess. But ideally, I want a mid forward swing just because I can see Jackson and Kerno being quite vulnerable compared to a McKercher, who's probably good for an 80, and you can probably loop with a Dowling who might get a spike score. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what will happen the last 6 weeks. There's a fair chance that I might actually move on and do what you said and get a defensive person like a Houston or a Young or a Yo or Wanganeen Miller in the defensive line and just see how I go because
I
at
would
the end of
probably
the day,
just hold for this week, to be honest
yeah,
with you.
I
I
would
think you've
see
got to.
myself hold.
I think you've got to have one trade at this far out, otherwise, because there's been an injury, someone will
Yeah,
get whatnot. So I think you need the one trade just for the next few
yeah.
weeks.
Exactly right. I think I don't think I'd be surprised if I ended up pushing the trade button this week, but I wouldn't be surprised if I jump on next week, particularly with Dylan Moore, and then pushing Dylan Moore into the forward line and essentially getting a Caldwell or Zorko up into the mids and then looping it in the Kirch or something like that with one of my weaker performing mids, because I'd rather wait a week and see if there's any late injury news with any of my defenders in particular, because they're obviously the most vulnerable. Having said that, they're most safest on field with regards to durability and performance at the moment. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see because Dylan Moore's got a high break even, so he's one I can just wait out on. Jai Clark's got an affordable break even, so yeah, I'm happy where it's at the moment. Just ideally would like maybe more scoring power on the field, but I guess with the season I've had with regards to a lot of last minute, not last minute, but almost roundabout trades that just haven't worked out. It's been frustrating, and I guess I've had a pretty good rank with where I'm sitting with regards to what's happened. But yeah, I mean, I can't complain so far. But yeah, moving swiftly on to our trade outs. This is where it will get quite interesting with your takes, Nathan, because you're obviously a Collingwood supporter. Dacos in particular is an interesting one, and we'll compare this with Ryan. Both defender premiums. Both were shoe-in for D1, D2 spots, but in the previous weeks have really suffered with regards to, Ryan's case, a bit of a role change, maybe not a role change per se, but a kind of defensive structure, rehashing the Freo defensive line, which has worked well for them. And Dacos hasn't necessarily been a heavy tag. I'd like to hear your opinion on how they go match up against Hawthorn in particular, considering they've had Dacos in particular has had a pretty shitty time against Hawthorn in recent times. But if you look at last three scores of Dacos, 89, 92, 116. Ryan, very similar, 98, 99, 116. You look at the matchups for Dacos. He's got Hawks, Tigers, Blues. Ryan's got the D's, West Coast Dons. So both favourable matchups with regards to players that they're playing against. But what are your thoughts on trading out one of these? If I'm only kind of entertaining this if you've got trades in the bank. Obviously, wouldn't do it with one trade left or something like that just because it's not worth it. But what are your thoughts on potentially trading these two out, considering Ryan really hasn't looked that amazing? I mean, scored okay. His kind of post buy and the suggestions that John Longmuir wants. What's his name? The Freo coach Longmuir wants to adjust.
Longmuir.
That's it. Wants to slightly adjust the way they've been moving the ball out of D50 compared to a Dacos, where, as I said, there hasn't been really any specific tag sent to him. But the last 2 weeks in particular, Geelong and Essendon have kind of implemented a team tag, which has worked really effectively in rushing Dacos' decision making and providing pressure on the ball, which causes him to turn it over a fair bit. But what are your thoughts on that, Nathan, especially coming from a Collingwood supporter like yourself?
Well, yeah, it's been hard watching Nick Dacos just get basically mitigated out of games. Look, I think both of these guys. I think this is probably what they're going to do for the rest of the year. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'd probably be more inclined to actually move Dacos on.
Yeah.
Just purely because I feel like that until Tom Mitchell comes back, for Collingwood and gets going, which probably I think he's about 2 to 4 weeks away. So that's basically the end of the year. I think Nick Dacos especially has really missed Tom Mitchell this year. And his ball winning ability, because I think Nick Dacos' role has changed with all these injuries. I don't think Craig McRae and Collingwood necessarily want Nick Dacos to be the clearance player. I think they want him to be the first receive or second receive. So I think not having Tom Mitchell there has really hurt him in this year. And I can see what's his name coming back for Hawthorn this week just to do that role.
Finn McGuinness. Yeah.
Yeah, Finn McGuinness. I can see him just coming back in and doing that hard tag. I don't see why they wouldn't do it. And as for Luke Ryan, he's probably been hurt more by, as you sort of touched on, a structural change in that I don't think Fremantle is sort of possessing the ball as much across their back line. I think they sort of more want to go forward a bit more, which I think Ryan really relies on that sort of chip mark game, which they sort of are still doing, but perhaps not as much as what they were. So I can actually see Jake Melcham going to him this week and sort of playing the diffuser role, if you will, which is basically a forward who gets sent to the opposition's best intercept defender, and basically just stops them from having their intercept game, a la Billy Frampton in the grand final on Harris Andrews. Basically the exact same type of role. So I can see both of them scoring probably pretty average this week, to be honest. But going forward, I don't think Richmond are going to tag. They never really have tagged. And Carlton don't really tag either. So there might be an opportunity for Dacos, but I think with the success of what Essendon and Geelong have done the last 2 weeks, I feel like sides would be absolutely mad to just let him run around unopposed because, as I said last week, I said with Zach Merritt, I said watching him run around and get 30 disposals and 15 score involvements was an absolute nightmare. And then Melbourne sent Neil Bullen to him on Saturday night and basically negated him out of the game, and Melbourne won the game. So I think sides know now that you've got to sort of tag these players, and I can see Nick Dacos just copying attention every week. So, yeah, I think it's one of these ones, though, where I think given the circumstances in the season, I think you've just got to hold both of them and just hope that they don't get tagged or they don't get injured. But if you're in a position to trade, I would probably be inclined to move Dacos on ahead of Ryan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Ryan has the capabilities of just scoring because through kickouts and intercept marks. I can also see Dacos being pushed back into defence against the Hawks this week to try and avoid the Finn McGuinness tag. We all know what McGuinness has done in previous encounters where he just follows him around.
I don't think that'll matter.
Like a bad smell. So, yeah, I can see Dacos definitely struggling. If you've got a loop this week to kind of see how Dacos goes first, it'd be ideal. Obviously, my position would have been the case if I had a defensive mid-rookie swing.
I mean, if you could loophole Colby McKercher, he'd be the perfect one to do because he plays on the Sunday night, and it basically means that you can basically pick whoever you want. As long as your eighth defender is not playing or they're playing, like if they're not playing until the Sunday, well, then you can basically loophole Dacos, and if he gets like a 40 like he did against Hawthorn, I think 2 times ago, well then you'd say McKerch is probably going to outscore him. So that's probably where I'd sit. But anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Now, swiftly moving on to our trading options, where we're going to obviously reveal our top 3 kind of unique options coming up. But yeah, the reason I put this as Rookie Mania is this week in particular was super frustrating, I think, for some owners, considering that with a lot of rookies actually outscored premiums and not just premiums, but uber premiums with so Merritt considered top 3 to 5 in his line. Philippou and Humphreys both outscored him. Sarong lost out to them. Tim English lost out to them. Sam Walsh lost out to them. You can name a whole heap that just didn't do as well as these 2 kids in particular. I just want to get you quick 2 cents worth on these 2 in particular. Philippou and Humphreys. Philippou coming back from a VFL stint, self kind of imposed and wanted to really improve on his midfield work. Come in and just dominated the last 2 weeks. Really looks like a Bontempelli type with his height and strength in contest. Obviously, still only 19, but it'd be interesting to see what you see from him on the outside perspective and in your rant. But also Humphreys as well. I went to this game live and so did Nathan. What I was most impressed by with Humphrey was his ability to get in the good positions at the right times. It seems he's taken that half-back role with regards to the likes of Stewart pushing forward into the midfield and then kind of floating back into defence. Whereas Humphreys has taken that half-back role. Gets a lot of cheap possessions around the back of the ground. Geelong love to chip mark. Their game style and premiership years have been built around that chip mark break through the corridor through that. And Humphreys, I think, is really also impressive by going back with the flight the ball. He took a lot of intercept marks as well, just flying back courageously, not being afraid of getting hit. And he's a pretty good person to have, especially on a D7 position. As I said, if I had him, it'd be really nice with McKercher and stuff like that rotating through. But what are your quick thoughts on those two guys in particular? And I've seen a lot of people on social media wanting to bring one or both of these kids in, especially at a reduced price, and thinking they can, maintain this scoring based on role and whatnot. But what are your 2 cents worth on these two?
I just will correct the Lawson Humphreys graphic there. So he's actually 207,400.
Oh, is he? Oh, my bad.
Yeah, and his break even's minus 54, not 21. So just ignore that graphic there.
Yeah.
So, but to answer your question, ideally, you're probably not going to want to bring either of these guys in unless you've got an injury to a rookie. My head says Philippou. No, sorry,
Yeah.
my head says Humphreys. My heart says Philippou. The only reason why I'm not sold on Philippou is because of the Ross Lyon factor. 1 week he might end up playing on the wing again, and then his scoring just gets destroyed. But I guess the advantage with Humphreys is that he's nearly 50k, nearly 60k cheaper, and he's got the defender mid eligibility, which I don't think Philippou has got DPP. No, he's just a forward.
Forward, yeah.
So I feel like they're probably going to roughly score about the same for the year. I don't think they're going to be scoring. Or what did Philippou get on the weekend? Philippou got 101. Yeah, and Humphreys got 108. I wouldn't be expecting that from them every week, but I think at this stage, if you ask me right now, I think I would bank the 60k, bank the defender mid eligibility, and just hope that Humphreys can stay in the side for the year. I can see his role probably changing less than Philippou's. I feel like Chris Scott does sort of need to reinvent, or maybe not reinvent, but reinvigorate with some younger kids in the side. And he did look really good, Lawson Humphreys. Obviously, I think Philippou will be probably a good to great player in a few years' time. But I think right now, if you're asking me out of these two and where they sit, I would probably go Humphreys and just bank the 60k, because it might be the difference between you getting, say, a Lockie Neal or being stuck with, like a, like a Sarong, for example. So I feel like I'd be doing Humphreys, but I think both of these options, if you're that desperate for one, I don't think you can go wrong with either one.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of disagree to some degree. I think if you're looking at bringing in one of the two, I would definitely recommend Philippou. Obviously, it depends on what you're looking for. Humphreys, I don't think, I think his ship has sailed with regards to his ability to be a 23rd premium per se. He just doesn't have the ceiling. That 108, I think, is going to go quickly out of his cycle. I can't see him maintaining that scoring potential just because of how well they dominated Collingwood. Obviously, your mob in the last quarter just really dominated the airways in particular and got a lot of uncontested possession. We all know that Collingwood leak a lot of points to halfbacks in particular, and Humphreys was playing that exact position. Whereas Philippou had an ugly night with regards to how St Kilda went against Adelaide and still scored very well. He's pretty much a best midfielder. And simply dominated against Sydney last week. And he just seems to has found a newfound confidence that we were really hoping for, I think, when he came to the club. I think the issue with Philippou as well is he's a good option as a 23rd premium put in brackets because obviously he's not. I see a lot of people thinking, oh, he's hit 2 tons in a row. I expect him to go further and continue averaging a 90-95. I don't think that's the case at all. I think you'd be lucky if you got 80 to 85 average at the end of the day. He could be well wrong. He could have scored 100 for the rest of the season with our draw at Marvel. But I just think his body's going to slowly start to break away a fair bit with regards to playing pure midfield. I can see the likes of Owens getting a rest and him swinging forward and playing a high half forward role. I don't think you can expect 100 to 110 every week out of Philippou. He's, just to give you perspective, he scored about 50 almost in the first quarter. He scored about 40 and to finish off with 101. So he definitely had some dead patches in between. And he got scaled up big time because he scored a big clutch goal in the third quarter to bring us back within that kind of 1 to 7 point range. But yeah, I think you'd only bring in Philippou if you're wanting a 23rd and you can't afford anyone else. But I'd rather use that money elsewhere if you feel like you need to upgrade an underperforming premium. I don't think Philippou's a shortcut to get a looping premium on. Like in my case, obviously, I can afford to bring in a Dan Houston, a Hayden Young, a Wangani Miller as a 23rd premium essentially, and loop the likes of Nick Martin through with McKercher. But I don't think Philippou's the option to that. He's an option if you really can't upgrade anywhere else and you just need a cheap upgrade to a D7, an F7, and loop with the likes of Kerno and things like that, especially playing West Coast this weekend. I think Philippou could do actually quite well. I don't think he's going to get attention from Yo or anything in particular, but I think he might go head to head with a Harley Reid or a Tim Kelly and something like that, and maybe really announce himself on the big stage in that game. But other than that, I can't see him being a quick kind of 23rd fix that you can otherwise afford with another 500k premium. But I guess moving on to our top 3 trade-in targets for round 19. I've kind of tried to make it one per position most weeks, just so we have a bit of variety. Obviously, there's a lot of different options. As the honourable mention, we've talked about Philippou. I think Maxi Holmes is a really good option in a defensive mid position. He just looks like he's found a new gear at the Cats. His running power is elite, and I don't think many opposition defenders can stop him. Defenders or wingers can stop him. The 3 options I've gone for is Hayden Young with a break-even of 67. Really liked his game on the weekend. I think he's really comfortable in that midfield defensive role, and he's scoring the best out of the lot at the moment, especially with Sarong getting tagged. Has a DPP as well, has a pretty nice fixture. Chad Warner back to his best against North Melbourne. Obviously, it's a bit of a downhill ski game, but he's probably one that you can loop as an option, considering he's going to have those high ceiling scores as well as some poorer scores. He's the cheapest out of the lot, bar Green, so I think he's one to look at if you're able to loop and don't need DPP. Toby Green's an interesting as one as well. Dominated against Richmond, kicked the 5 goals, I think, and just looked immense. He's their one ticket, I think, to success in September. He just really needs to perform if there's any chance. Low break even, I wouldn't pay anything above 480 for him. But what are your thoughts, Nathan, on those picks really quickly? And is there anyone else that you can think of from a classic perspective or someone you've enjoyed having in draft that you can bring into your side as well?
Well, if you're asking me to be brutally honest, there's only one option out of these 3, and that's Hayden Young. The other 2... I just think at this stage of the year, there's probably better options than Chad Warner. I think sides have sort of started working out a little bit with Sydney, and I think, I think he just cashed in on the fact that it was North Melbourne. But he might cash in against Collingwood as well, to be honest. But I feel like the Lions and the Dogs, especially games, might not be as easy.
Yeah.
And so I'd be surprised if he kept going. And as for Toby Green, well, I'd be a little bit more concerned with the fact that the Giants had 36 inside 50s and were playing basically a very Richmond side. So the fact that they've only managed to generate 36 inside 50s against the Richmond side who been injury hit all year. The fact that he did as well as he did is probably a great thing for him. But if they're only having 36 inside 50s against probably just about any other team, he's probably not scoring 4 goals. So, whereas I think Hayden Young is the future of that Freo midfield. So, yeah, I think I would definitely be jumping on the Hayden Young bandwagon there, and the other two would be a straight through to the keeper per se. Because I think there's better options out there than both of them. The only exception to that, however, might be in draft. If you don't have Warner or Green in draft, then perhaps there might be options you look at. But for classic, I think it's just Hayden Young and move on. And I think in draft, you obviously Hayden Young would probably already be in some A side in draft, but Warner and Green, maybe more so Warner, might have got passed on. So I feel like if you can probably bring one of them in, they're probably not the worst options for draft, as I said, but for classic, yeah, I probably wouldn't go there. I would probably have, to be honest with you, if I'm being honest, I'd probably have Max Holmes ahead of Chad Warner. If I'm being brutally honest with you, I think Holmes is midfielder eligible. Yeah. So I'd probably be going Young 1, Holmes 2, and then I'd probably have Warner and Green and Philippou all in the same basket where I probably wouldn't be bringing them in. But if you had to give me an order for them, I'd go Young 1, Green 2, Warner 3 in that order.
Yeah, I agree with that regards. I think Warner definitely did cash in. I think the caveat with that is if you can push him to an M9 and loop him like with the McKercher, you're probably trying to obviously target his high ceiling scores and have another look at him. Obviously, you'd have to check if your loops work in time with him, but he's definitely one that you could easily look for his potential 150 games and cash out. But yeah, I think adding on to what you said earlier on as well, I think the best options as well that are scoring wise around that 500k bracket are probably going to be the likes of, Houston, Young, Nazai and Miller, and they're all defensive eligible. Elliot Yeo, they're scoring better than most of the 520 odd midfielders. But moving on to the last segment before we hear Nathan's rants. First of all, just apologies for the audio. I think we've been cutting in and out a little bit. It's the first time that we've used StreamYard together as well. So hopefully we can just touch up on that audio moving forward. But yeah, top 3 VCC options this week. I think it'd be quite interesting. There's definitely scope for spike scores this weekend against easy opposition. I'll get your thoughts, Nathan, in a minute. But yeah, Merritt against the Crows at Marvel. I don't think the Crows are going to tag, or they might attempt to, but I can't see them with much success. If anything, I think Dawson might have sacrificed a captaincy role to really try and negate Merritt. I think he's the only one capable of doing so. The others are just too slow around contest. Zachy Butters scored 175 against Richmond in round 2. I could see him doing a very similar thing, considering Tom Green got about 500 disposals against Richmond the other day. And unfortunately for me, didn't use them like anything at all well that caused him to get less than 100 for that kind of work. But Jordan Clark, I think, is one as a bit of a POD if none of you VCs work. Plays the Ds at Optus, previous score of 127. As you said, I think Melksham goes most likely to Orion. I could see him going also to a Clark, but I don't think Melksham is there to tag him on the ground. He's more as an intercept to kind of stop Ryan flying for the marks. I think he's the one that's going to be impacted the most of that Melksham kind of negating role up in the air. But what are your thoughts on not necessarily these captaincy options, but any other options that you might think might be a bit of a smoky that could pop off?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do have a couple of other ones, just looking through the games, but I think Merritt is the logical vice captain choice.
Yep.
I think I do agree with you. I think Dawson's the only one who's capable of tagging Merritt, and we saw against Collingwood what Merritt does when he's unchecked. So I think Dawson's going to have to sacrifice his game to probably negate Merritt, which then again probably takes away what he's good at as well. So it's probably a lose-lose there. It's probably a risky game for Adelaide to do. And I think Butters is probably the perfect captain choice this week, given he plays on the Saturday night. And Richmond are just that hit in the midfield at the minute. I don't even know if Taranto's going to get up after that tackle from Bedford. So I'd be doing Merritt into Butters. I'd be just leaving the Sunday games and just watching them with thing. But I do have another couple of options here for those that might be looking for one. So Tom Green, against
Yeah.
the Gold Coast Suns. Obviously the Giants, as I just touched on earlier, the Giants top 6 side at home, bottom 6 side away. The fact that they're away means that Tom Green probably might do well. And the other one I don't mind is one of your guys, Jack Sinclair for St Kilda,
Yeah.
against West Coast could have a field day, or Nazaya, but I'd probably be, if I didn't go with Merritt, I'd probably be going with Jack Sinclair, to be perfectly honest with you. Just given the fact that I don't think West Coast are going to tag, and I think the way that West Coast are going to play now, I think they're just going to basically, quite often we see with these interim coaches, they basically just don't defend. They basically just play to score. So I feel like that's going to open them up defensively, and I think Jack Sinclair can really take advantage of that. The Hawthorn Collingwood game, if you're that brave for one, I think James Sicily might be a bit of a left field option. He doesn't mind playing Collingwood, like most of the Hawthorn squad don't. And the fact that Collingwood don't have a recognised key forward unless McStay comes in second up, which would probably be a risky move, that I think Sicily can really dominate the Collingwood forward line. So, I think I'd probably be leaning Merritt into Butters. But I mean, obviously, the other option too, obviously, I don't think you can ever go wrong with Marcus Bontempelli. So I'd be doing Merritt or Sinclair into Butters or Bontempelli.
Yeah,
Stick
definitely
with
can't.
Merritt and Butters.
Yeah, definitely can't complain. I think Merritt and Sinclair are not bad options. Sinclair, if he plays the early Saturday games, he got enough time in between to make that VC change with the emergencies and all that if you need be. But moving to Nathan's favourite segment where he blows up for 10 minutes, and hopefully this recording's gone on for a little bit, so hopefully it doesn't go on for too long. Unfortunately, my boys are in the firing line. I have a feeling I know who Nathan's going to target. I'm hoping I know who he's going to target. And obviously a Port youngster who didn't do too well at all. I think if he had him in SuperCoach, he'd be fuming. It was a -1 for most of the game. But I'll leave it to you, Nath, and roll with it.
Yeah, well, this one's gonna hurt Thomas. Actually, watching or listening to me go after his Saints, but yeah, I don't know what's happened down at St Kilda. To be perfectly honest with you, after round 2, everyone had them as flag favourites after they beat Collingwood at the MCG, in the Danny Spud Frawley game. And ever since then, they've basically fallen off a cliff. I don't know what's going on at St Kilda. I don't know if Ross Lyon's sort of been worked out, where basically if you can shut down the St Kilda run and just basically let them bomb the ball inside 50, that you can get them back the other way. Because all of St Kilda's stats are actually not too bad. They're a good ball movement team, but they're horrendous at getting the ball inside. I mean, they're horrendous at converting once the ball goes inside 50. So I think sides are sort of happy to perhaps play that turnover game against St Kilda, because I think they know that if they can just get the ball inside 50, that they're probably going to be able to beat St Kilda. So I think for Ross Lyon, I think he's got a massive, massive job in the preseason to actually get this side back up and running. In the preseason, I actually had this side as a finals lock. I thought that they would improve on last year, but the drop away has been just bizarre, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm not sure. I think they should probably win this week against West Coast, but yeah, I feel like this has been a bit of a wasted year for St Kilda, in a sense that I think a lot of people probably thought they'd improve and they've gone backwards. So the one consolation I do have with St Kilda is they do have a lot of games still against sides who are in the finals race. just looking here, they've got basically all of their games except for Richmond and West Coast. They're still against sides in the finals race, so they can be one of these sides who can shape the 8 if they beat the sides who they shouldn't be beating based on form. While they can do that, but I think overall it's been a really, really probably disappointing and frustrating year for St Kilda fans. And as for Jason Horne-Francis, well, I don't know what more to say other than he just got too emotionally involved in the game, gave away two 50-meter penalties. The fact that he only had 9 disposals for the whole game, and as Thomas touched on, was -1 for most of the game. So the one consolation for this is that the fact that he was able to go forward and kick 2 goals, but to get 7 disposals away from the 2 goals is not good enough, to be frankly honest. And for Port Adelaide to be any chance of doing any damage for the next 10 years, they need him to be what North Melbourne drafted him as, but the player who they traded for, which was that inside bull who can go forward and kick goals. So to get 9 disposals is just not good enough. So Jason, I know it's only your 3rd year or whatever, but you need a lift. And if you lift, then the rest of the side around you will start performing more consistent than what they have. And that is my nag for the week.
Short and sharp this week. I like it. Obviously, we were lucky enough to have Saints TV, Jake from Saints TV, the host of Saints TV, to come on last week to talk about St Kilda footy. Yeah, I guess frustrations can be said throughout the Saints fan base as well. Just touching on what you said, Nathan, it's been a really frustrating year with regards to expectations that we had and we overachieved and whatever. Like, obviously, listen to the video between myself and Jake if you want to hear a more in-depth analysis. But yeah, hopefully we can bounce back and hopefully, if anything, what this year has shown is the kind of the dead wood we've been having for years with regards to especially bringing in Bonner this season with Zach Jones. Seasons, I think he's been the club. It's just been frustrating. They're just not performing. Having said that, I did see a post by Jake himself in Saints TV showing that I'm assuming a St Kilda supporter or a troll or whatnot managed to get Zach Jones's email and wrote a pretty vile, abusive email to Zach Jones himself. And I think that's just one thing that's not on, regardless of whether your players have been frustrating or even in a SuperCoach sense, your players are stinking it up on the ground. I think there's a line too far, definitely, if you're sending in emails or posting abusive content about players, and they're obviously trying their hardest as well, as much as it might be not evident on TV sometimes, but they're obviously the first player to cop the criticism within the four confines of the footy club, but also as they're the ones hurting the most, I think, on the inside as well. So I think there's a fine line, especially if you're going to cop abuse or post abuse, especially online. I think it's a different story if you met the person face to face. And I think, Zach Jones is, as much as he's been a frustrating watch for St Kilda supporters, he tries his heart out each week, and sometimes it just doesn't go to plan. But that's about it for today. But before we wrap it up, I know I've been playing this game a little bit myself. I know doing so, but there's been a game that brought up my attention, if I get this working, called Worpel. So we'll have a quick go at this between me and Nathan. We'll try and do this each review. I know Nathan knows his players pretty well, so I think as soon as we pop this silhouette up, I think he might nail it in one go. But we'll see how we go. So if you're not aware, you can do this without the silhouette or with the silhouette and just guess the player. So you type the name of the player in here. It'll tell you essentially club, position, state, and it'll give you a green, amber, or red, I'm pretty sure, or like essentially a color coding system depending on how accurate you are. But I'll pop up the first silhouette, Nathan. You can have a go at guessing who the player is. These are obviously current players, I think.
Oh God, you can't actually see them. This might be harder than I thought.
Yeah.
Charlie Curnow.
Oh, that's not a bad one. No, as players, so basically, if you're not aware of this, Nath, anyone that wants to play along, Vic, it was obviously state-wise, it's a Victorian club. He shares the colours of the Carlton club. He debuted before 2016, is above the age of 27. I think it's a close, if it's yellow, I'm pretty sure it's close to that date. And obviously the ones that are not shaded in is a lower number than 30, lower than 194 centimetres, not a key forward. My guess he's a key back key back or mid is probably my guess. But plays for a Vic club.
So he's older than 27.
Yes, by one, I think.
And he debuted in. He doesn't play for Carlton, but he plays for another Victorian club. Is that what you're saying?
So it's a Victorian club, correct?
And he's older than 27. Gee, he's lower than. Maybe let's go with Zach Merritt.
Let's have a look. So we got the mid and the age right. Plays for Vic club, but not Essendon and Carlton. I guess it might be a singular player that I can't guess myself. Brad, Crouch, I don't think is above 6 foot.
No, it doesn't look like Brad Crouch.
Seb Ross, I don't think. One of the Dogs players, maybe.
Maybe Trelaw.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Maybe he might be older than 28 though.
No, he's 31, so he's in between that bracket. Who are the bloody Victorian clubs are missing? One of your boys?
No, it doesn't look like a Collingwood player.
North player, perhaps. Actually, nah, North are too young midfield. A Hawks player, I reckon it must be it. No. Oh. Just trying to flip the teams up on my phone at the moment. A Cats player, maybe Dangerfield?
Nah, it wouldn't be Dangerfield. He's not 28.
Let me just do Duncan as an option.
I'd be too old, I think, Mitch Duncan.
Yeah. Cats. Maybe a D's player. Viney.
It could be Viney.
Viney or Oliver's in that midfield. Petrarca's in that midfield.
It could be. No, I think it could be Jack Viney, maybe.
It's the hair that's throwing me off. Yeah, he plays for the D's, but we can't figure out who he bloody plays. Let me bring up the team sheet from this week.
It's not. It can't be Oliver. It's not Petrarca, is it?
Nah, surely not. The blokes. Oh, actually, nah. I'm 27, so Petrarca could be. Yeah. Oh, fuck's sakes! I put in the wrong. So we got one guess left because I screwed up with Petruccelli. It's not Petrarca, but nailed the age. Oliver?
Nah, it wouldn't be Oliver. I think he was after, wasn't he?
I thought they got drafted in the same year.
I don't think Clayton Oliver's 28 though.
Let me
no, he's not. He's 26.
Yeah, no.
It's not Jack Viney. It's not Petrarca. He's a midfielder though.
It'll be like a winger or something that's been or
not Ed Langdon.
Nah, maybe. May, Oliver McVeigh, Rivers, Melksham, Pickett, Neil Bullen. Neil Bullen? How old's Neil Bullen?
Ed Langdon's 28.
Oh, Neil Bullen's actually 20. I reckon it's him. Let's have a go at Neil Bullen. There we go. Oh, no, it's Ed Langdon.
It was Ned Langdon.
It's because he doesn't have his bloody long hair. He's got that.
Oh.
Yeah, well.
It was Ed Langdon.
Anyway, a bit of fun there. So, yeah, we'll probably flick that at the end of the episode as a bit of something different and something that you guys obviously can play along live if you're watching the YouTube video as well. But other than that, hopefully you have a good weekend this round. I think there's a fair few friendly matchups just looking at the fixtures that could get some spice scores in. having said that, I know one of my mates who is doing really nicely, North supporter, ranked about 250, so doing excellently. He's got Lockie Neal. It's popped off the last 3 out of the 4 weeks. Could struggle against Sydney, especially with a Jordan tag coming. But yeah, hopefully you've got a team sort out for this weekend that's got full premium, or you're in a luxury position where you got a 23rd premium. Just moving forward, I know this episode's gone on for longer than expected, but we're probably lucky enough to have Pair TV from the Port Adelaide fan channel to come. I don't know if it's called Pair TV, but yeah, the pair in Adelaide hopefully can talk a bit of Port stuff this week. We're just getting that sorted with regards to timings, but hopefully he can share a bit of insight into Nathan's rant or his analysis on Horn Francis as a player, but also as a club in general. But other than that, we'll catch you for the next episode next week when me and Nathan will be back to review round 19.